afternoon, everyone. I would like to call this hearing to order, and I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Carrie Winkleader. I'm your chairperson today, and I'm joined on the board by Ms. Lori Davidson and Mr. Ron Merritt, and our city assessor today is Michael Taylor, and our admin secretary is Belen Rojo. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparison of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it and the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board. If the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible, and as information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. And thank you. You can swear everybody in.
Please state your full name.
Trevor Smith.
And you swear the evidence you represent is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and nothing but
I do.
Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Smith and Mr. Taylor. Whenever you're ready, do you want to start us off on the first property? And I understand there's a non-co-op on it?
Sure. So you want to read the roll number first?
Sure.
Sure. So the file number for 2970 on the highway is 19-1596. Roll number 030602-90100. Proposed 2020 assessed value is $3,824,000. There's the request for no non-co-op. Just looking over at page 2, I just looked at the history of income expense questionnaires for the subject. In the last 10 years, we've only really gotten the 2012 and 2015, so 2 years out of 10. For the subject property, the 2015 is included in my submission on page 4.
Sorry, what page was the not having received it?
Not having received it, you want the registered mail and everything. So that's page 17, as the tracking signed for by Diane Matheson. And has the envelope there on the same page, and then just a blank mailer that has the same tracking number on pages 18 and 18. And then, like I said, the 2015 mailer on pages 20 and 21.
You received it then?
In 2015 and 2012 we received it. That was pretty much it the last decade. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Questions?
I have no questions.
Are you contesting?
I really have nothing to add.
Okay.
It wasn't submitted. It was received.
Did you wish to?
There's really nothing to dispute, I don't think.
Okay. So are you willing to accept?
We are, I guess, willing to accept.
Okay.
It's apparent that it wasn't filled out, returned. Hasn't been, so that's fair.
Okay, thank you. If you would like to proceed with your brief then?
Sure, I think on this particular property, we have reached a mutual agreement, so I'm not sure if Mr. Taylor
Yeah,
wants to present that.
I can present that. We have a joint
Okay.
recommendation.
All right, go ahead.
Applicant, and such to reduce the value $3,824,000 down to $3,346,000.
346?
Yeah, 3,346.
And you are accepting of this?
We are, yes.
Okay, thank you. Can you tell us why?
Just similar to all the other joint recommendations you're making, it's based on the revised NOI.
Panel, any questions? Mr. Merrill?
Just, Mr. Taylor, is this going to be applicable to all the properties, or is, you know, like, I'm just trying to, when you guys come to an agreement,
Yep.
it's really market rents and possibly cap rate.
So when we come to agreement, usually it's just on the final number. We might disagree, similar
Okay.
to like myself, Rocky, Carrie,
Okay,
other agents. We're agreeing on the final number more than the
okay,
way to get there.
okay, that's good enough, thank you.
Ms. Davidson?
I have no questions, thank you.
Okay.
So yeah, for any other recommendations, we do the same.
Just for the record, I'm gonna ask you anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I thank you both on that, and we'll move on to 1 Clarny.
The file number for 1 Killarney Avenue is 19-494. The roll number is 0304-2376-100. The proposed 2020 assessed value is $2,604,000. Basically have a strip mall on the corner of Killarney and Pembina Highway. We have 4 units on site, built in 1973. We have a leasable area today of 8,890 square feet. Page 2 just shows they have been compliant in sending in their income defense questionnaires. Pages 3 and 4 just have some strip mall rental amounts along Pembina Highway, ranging from the low teens up to just over $20, $25 a square foot. Page 5, it's the same for you guys. Page 5 has the income workup for the subject property. Everything is model driven. Including the cap rate we see down at 7%, 7.05%. So that's the 80th percentile on the bell curve if you're looking over on page 6. It's just its average, it's slightly below average. Strip mall. Got the standard addendum package included on pages 8 all the way through 16. Page 17 has the aerial photograph of the subject property. So you can see there where it's located on the corner of the Pembina Highway and Killarney there, right close to the new Sobeys that's been developed there. Former mall that was on that site back in the day when this was built. Have the income expense questionnaire after that. So I'm going to get into a little bit, one of the issues on hand today after reviewing the applicant's brief, so I'm just going to address it ahead of time, is the issue of vacancy. So on the last page, page 20, just shows the 1 unit being vacant as they reported on the 2017 mailer, which is included there on page 20. So it shows it was vacant at December 31st, 2017, which is what I had in our business, or the department has for business records of Scotiabank, which was the former tenant there. Moving out at the end of 2017, have visited the site, to beat Ms. Chairman to the question on that. Have reviewed and have had to delegate some of our junior staff permits on the subject property for the occupancy of the Tim Hortons. That's now where the Scotiabank was. Essentially, they moved out to occupy a pad site right by Sobeys on that parcel. I don't know when they had notified the owner. I guess the applicant can get to that when he wants to. But basically what we have is we vacated Scotiabank in December of 17. We have permits for the Tims going to February of 18. So my argument would be that they were working on, there's demolition permits to remove all the bank fit up and all the stuff because Scotiabank had been there a long time, and to get it ready for the Tims occupancy. So my position is that the 4% vacancy is appropriate. Thank you. That's my position.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Smith?
As Mr. Taylor said, most of the disagreement is around vacancy. I guess our other point of discrepancy would, of course, be the expenses for the property. I'm not sure. Did you address that in your presentation?
Yeah.
But just.
Sorry, this is just questions to the assessor right now.
Yes.
What he has said.
I was, that's a good point, it wasn't addressed, so. The city has changed their modeling with regard to the expense allowance for retail and other investment properties for the 2020 cycle. Do you know what specific expense items are included in the 2% that the city is allowing for in the expense allowance in the 2020 cycle?
In the 2020 cycle?
Yeah.
You're looking for specific line items?
Well, it's been noted before, and the reason I ask it that way is it's been noted before what's not included, but not specifically what is included in it.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to comment on exactly what's included.
Okay. Those are all of my questions for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Davidson?
Yeah, I'd like to just maybe get a little bit more clarification on the vacancy, since that was one of the main ones. So you've used the model generated vacancy of 4%.
Correct.
And you've indicated that the bank left December 17th, Tim Hortons came on February 18th.
Well, no, to be clear, the permit issue date, so essentially when the city stamped that they received the plans from the owner was February 13th. So I'm not sure when the owner would have gotten notice that Scotiabank was leaving. I'm assuming they would have gotten some kind of notice, formal notice saying they were leaving at the end of the year, at which point the owner could have procured new tenancy, the Tims. But my argument is just that we could apply a higher vacancy if it just had sat vacant from December 17th onward, but there were development plans right away.
I see.
Yeah, so it's not like it was sitting vacant, completely not being used still as a Scotiabank shell. And I'm not really sure what the terms involved in terms of, it's not like their lease was up at the end of 17, the lease went right through
So
to
they were still
2020.
getting income.
So I'm not sure if they still received income on that unit or not, because it wasn't really reported beyond 17 here.
Okay.
I would be getting post-reference information. So that's all I'm saying is they redeveloped it. The original lease was good until well past the reference date, so that's why I'm saying the 4% is
Okay.
more appropriate.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor, no consideration is given to the non-recoverable item for this particular subject property?
Well, the non-recoverable expense allowance is the 2%.
Yes. But nothing else in regards to, in previous years?
Where we had the line item management 5%?
Yes.
No.
Okay. This is all model driven, no overrides or anything like that?
Nothing, even the vacancy rate, that's the market, strip mall vacancy rate.
And I think you stated you have visited the property.
Yeah.
I have no other questions, Madam Chairman. Sorry.
Just one question, Mr. Taylor. So, the strip mall is 1973,
Yeah.
which makes it, 47 years old?
Correct.
And did you yourself do the on-site inspection?
Yeah, I can give a little bit more knowledge on the property too. I used to actually work when I was in high school at the mechanic shop right here. So I'm well aware, the 7-Eleven's been there forever. The other 3 units have kind of seen some change from dry cleaners to Scotiabank was there forever also. Yeah. But yes, I was the one who visited the site.
Okay, so the
Yeah.
condition is average?
They have done some modernization, I guess, to it. You know, there's been other hearings I've had where they ask if they've redone the outside of the strip mall to make it look fancy and new. And Shiny, and they have done that work. It was my position in previous hearings, it still continues to be the same, that doesn't make it above average, just because they shine up the outside. I would still consider it an average strip mall, has a 7-Eleven, has Tim Hortons, so.
Okay. So you were there on occasion when you were working at the garage?
Oh, yeah, but that was years and years and years ago. Yeah,
Are you trying to tell us that you hung out at the 7-Eleven?
maybe on their breaks, yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's right on Pembina Highway in Clocky there, right by 4-H Room Collegiate. Yeah, that's the same.
Thank you. Would you like to give us your presentation, Mr. Smith?
Yes, thank you. So I'll be relatively concise in this as well. I see that we're very close on the potential rent on it. Ours is based on a projection for the vacant unit as of that time frame for the market. The city's projected rent comes in very close. Our cap rates are virtually the same, so we're in agreement there. The deltas, of course, are vacancy issue and, of course, the expense. So I'll really just limit myself to those two, I guess. If you want to see some background, building description is on my page number 2. And you can see some exterior photos of the property as well as interiors. You have your standard 7-Eleven finish with older tile flooring, T-bar acoustic ceiling. They are what they are. You have the optometrist, which is there now. At the time it was a smaller tailor shop that had been there for quite some time. So it looked a little different at that point. There's a Singletons in place as well, looking like they look. And at the time frame, you had a Scotiabank and post-reference. We now have a Tim Hortons that has moved in there. So looking at the time frame with regard to the vacancy is important. We do manage, Stevenson manages the property. Our records show that the tenant, Scotiabank, vacated as of the end of October 2017 versus the end of 2017, so we have them leaving in October 1, 2017. I don't have access to the permits, of course, so permits, I understand, were issued in February, so obviously when you have a vacancy coming up, there is marketing that goes on for the property. That's without question. The deal would have been signed sometime in that intervening period there, and they made the application for permits. You then have the period of build-out that needs to take place, right? So we have a gulf in occupancy between October and essentially when they occupied it. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the date when they moved into the unit. Suffice it to say, it wasn't April 1, takes some time to build out these as Tim Hortons and put in all of their fit out, all of their specific finish that they have, so it looks like all the other Tim Hortons, and matches all of their branding. So suffice it to say, we would have a period of time, call it, I would say, in and around 6 to 8 months, where we would not have occupancy in that unit. That unit, 4,203 square feet, we're looking at slightly under 50% of the leasable area for the building, so it's a very significant part of the building. It doesn't form a small component. So we're not obviously asking for 40 or 50% vacancy for the unit. It is leasing up, but it should be recognized that over the period of time that you're looking at the property, so if we look at it on a 3 or a 5 year basis, you have this 6 to 8 month vacancy of half of the building, which is, call it 40, 45%, whatever that number equals out to. That should be averaged over the time frame of the property. So we're simply looking for, and that's one unit that we're looking at. I don't believe 7-Eleven is going anywhere, but there has been some turnover on the Taylor, and there's Singletons there that hasn't always been there. So there are other units that could incur vacancy too. So we're simply looking for a slight recognition of that additional vacancy component that they're facing and leasing up roughly 40-45% of their buildings. So we're asking for 10%. In recognition of that, the market stats are shown on page 13. This is the Johnson report we're referring to, and we're looking at 3.9% for strip center retail at end of year 2017, 5-year average of 4.6. Overall retail vacancy rate of 5.9% at the end of 2017. We do have a strip center here, so that's probably more appropriate. Now, there's a bit of text there with regard to the time frames. 47.5%, I guess, is the vacancy rate at a point in time, as it works out to 19.8% on an annualized basis. We're looking for 10% as a reflection of the vacancy. On the expense allowance side, I know each of you have heard this before, so hopefully we can run through this relatively quickly. As stated, the city has adjusted their model for the 2020 timeframe and removed the 5%, what was termed management fee, from the expenses that they allow. This is different than the past cycles as presented by the city over the last number of cycles from roughly 2000 onwards, where they allowed 5% for what was termed management and 2%, which was always termed as structural before the Board of Revision here and hearings that I sat in. The theory behind the inclusion of the non-recoverable expenses we'll get to in a minute. The management terminology is problematic. It's been recognized as such. The city is stating that property management fees, which is what they're stating that management fee was for, are recoverable through standard leases. They are recoverable from standard leases. This hasn't changed in the last cycle or the last many years. That's always been the case. So a removal of that 5% is based on that being considered a property management fee on the city's end. What we're contending is that it was never intended to be representative of a property management fee. It's representative of the overall non-recoverables. The information with regard to the theory from the Appraisal Institute of Canada is on page 13. The deduction of landlord paid operating expenses to get down to the net operating income. I don't think we're in any disagreement on that. As far as the structure, it's what's included in non-recoverables that's important here. So I have itemized roughly 10 line items here. And the important thing to consider is whether a tenant would typically be responsible for paying these, or if these would be costs that the owner would typically incur in their overall management of the property. So professional fees with relation to the property, legal and accounting, could you typically recover those from a tenant? No, you typically can't recover those from tenants. Asset management, this is a very minor component that I'll skip over. Essentially, it's a very small portion of the market. It should be recoverable, but it's not in contention here today on the subject. Landlord work. Landlord work is essentially work that the landlord has to do to the property or units to bring them up to a rentable standard. So when you have a Scotiabank move out, to bring the building back to base condition, shell condition they call it, involves a certain investment of money by the owner. There's other items that they also have to repair at their own cost that are not borne by the tenancies. Leasing commissions, obviously tenants are not going to pay the landlord's leasing commissions to put themselves into the landlord's building. Tenant improvements, we can deal with that if you wish. Owner repair and maintenance outside of structural repair. Typically there is repair that's required for properties such as parking lot maintenance, paving, signage, many other things that come up that would not fall within the normal recoveries as noted in tenant leases. Marketing, tenants are not going to pay for your marketing for your property. Tenant inducements, typically in competitive markets, there's often a free rent component that's offered to tenants to get that tenant to come to your retail property versus their other options on the marketplace. You'll offer them, say, 1 to 2 months rent. That's a cost that the landlord incurs. Credit checks, and in very rare cases, property management fees. There's some obviously government leases where you don't recover them, but by and large, property management is a recoverable fee. We did a 3-year historical study of these non-recoverable expenses at Stevenson Advisors between 2016 and 2018, over 45 to 53 properties, on properties where we had full access to income and expense information at year-end, year-end for those properties. Our 3-year averages are shown there, broken into 2 categories. Non-recoverable expenses, exclusive of TI, averaged 11.5%. Non-recoverable, inclusive of TI, was at 12.7%. So what we're showing here essentially is that your overall non-recoverable expenses outside of structural would fall within these general ranges. Now, I recognize that these are above the 5% as allowed by the city in the past. We're not asking for, at this time, an increase to the non-recoverable expenses, but we are asking the board to recognize that those expenses are real. We have studied them, as have other appellants, and we're simply asking for a reinstitution of that 5% plus the 2% structural in the valuation model. Beyond that, I think we are in agreement on the other terms. We have a 0.05% difference in cap that I will leave to the board. So our final market value based on these inputs is $2,263,000, and there's some material in the addenda with regard to the acceptance of the 5% if the panel wishes to see it. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Taylor?
Just limit it to 1. So you had your blurb on the 10 things you guys put in for your non-recoverables. Some of them relate directly to the income expense statement. I was just curious if you did an analysis or a stabilization of the expenses and recoveries that the subject property has.
Yeah, when we're looking at, so this is an interesting case. We do manage this property, but the income and expense form is actually input. Let me find it here. Perhaps it's easier to find in yours.
It's right by your cap rate report,
Okay, so it
or my
is,
page 19.
this is actually input, this owner is out of Calgary. This particular owner is based in Calgary, and they actually do their own inputting of this information for whatever reason on the income and expense side. So I see that they have not necessarily included all categories that would fall within your IND report there.
Well, and some of the line items, like you asked me a question about before,
Yeah.
and it's really hard to say specific ones because some properties, they'll write in the extra ones.
Yeah.
You even mentioned tenant inducements or all the other stuff, but there's a section on the mailer to fill that in, but it's, I'd say about 3 or 4% of the time people actually will take the time to fill in that part.
It is rare, yes.
Whereas that's not what we usually see. But my question initially was specifically more, did you calculate what the actual non-recovered amount was for 2017?
I did not do that specifically for this property, no. And again, if we look at the INE as noted, it doesn't have all the
All those
detail
amounts,
that
yeah.
you would need. But if we look at, say, leasing commissions alone, if we look at, depending when you charge that, you have, half the building, there's a leasing commission on putting the new tenant into that vacancy.
Yeah.
I won't go through the others.
My point is just, yeah, I get what you guys have been selling and all that stuff, but when we're looking at it, and I did the math on this one, and it's only coming in at 1.5% is not recoverable. So we're using 2, they're reporting it's only 1.5%.
Yeah. I guess I would,
What do you want us to do?
I would, yeah, and I understand the difficulty on the city side, but I would agree with you that not all of the information is necessarily included on the INE, and I think part of
No, I
that,
totally agree on that too, because we talked too about that
Yeah.
Scotiabank lease wasn't really fully expired, but we don't
Yeah.
have any information on what happened there, so.
I think the part of that, and maybe this is something that the department will address, is that there's no specific, there may be a section for specific line items that I noted, but certainly a lot of them aren't recognized on here, so
Yeah.
they don't fill them out because they're not there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just different, I mean, you'll have different agencies, I'm sure Stevenson will do things differently than Altus will do in terms of which expenses they're gonna put in for the house.
Maybe slightly, but
Okay, thank you. Davidson?
I have no questions, thank you.
Mr. Merritt?
Yes, Mr. Smith, looking at your vacancy, I guess, I'm just reading, when the Scotiabank, didn't renew and they vacated, the percentage is like 47%.
correct.
So, and that was back in October of 17.
Right.
So, you go on and you talk about annualizing the vacancy rate and at close to 20, and yet you've only used 10.
Correct.
So, wouldn't you consider a higher figure for vacancy?
Well,
Or
no.
the rationale for the 10?
Happy to walk through it there. So we're looking at obviously the market value of the property, and as a true investment property, this is a strip center retail. You're looking at it not entirely at one point in time, so I can't ask for 47% vacancy or that. We need to be fair about that and look at it over a broader time horizon, so a 3 to 5 years. So we have 47% at that point in time, closer to 20 on the annualized basis, but that tenant's going to be there for some time in that unit, roughly half the building. There may be some vacancy that might pop up in the others, but if you spread that one tenancy vacancy over a span of time, it's going to increase the overall vacancy because of the size of that unit in relation to the building. You may have normal vacancy in the others that may pop up. So we're simply asking for an increase to 10 as representative over a normal time horizon.
But in all likelihood, you probably could have asked for more. Or,
Well, one could ask for more, but I think Mr. Taylor and I try to be as fair as we can with each other. And I don't think it would be appropriate to ask for more necessarily in this particular case.
Okay. So, I look at the numbers, et cetera, for NOIs and, you know, and you can, so I don't think I have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So other than the Scotia Bank vacating, had this mall been experiencing any vacancy?
They had turnover from the former Taylor to, I think it's an optometrist that is in there now. And I believe the Taylor was in the 823 square feet, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just flip back to my I&E here. They had been there for a period of time, so they expired at the end of 2017 as well. I think they extended on a very short-term basis from October through the end of 2017. And I am not 100% sure as to when the optometrist would have gone in there, but of course there would have been a build-out period for that tenancy as well. So they would have been marketing that space as well. But you would have the same you know, 4 to 6 to 8, however long it would take to get the tenant signed and then do the build-out for them. Now it's 823 square feet versus 4,200, but that would add to the vacancy as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both. Any wish for a summation?
No, thank you.
And we'll move on to 1048 Pembina.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Taylor, whenever you're ready.
Sure. File number for 1048 Pembina Highway is 19-567. Roll number is 0309-07-36100. The proposed 2020 assessed value is $3,724,000. We have a joint recommendation from the applicant and assessor to reduce the value from that $3,724,000 to $3,252,000 based on a revised NOI and cap rate again.
What is the revised cap rate?
We go into those.
I'm sorry?
We're not gonna go into that.
Okay.
It's more an agreement on the final market value, more or less. Yes.
Okay.
We have different cap rates, so.
And you're accepting this, Mr. Smith?
We are, yes.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Davidson, any questions?
No, I have no questions.
Mr. Mayor?
Not at this point, thank you.
Withdrawn from 2015, yeah, sorry about that. Thank you. They're way ahead of me.
Okay, and this is gonna take us to 1270 Pembina Highway.
Sure.
So
034. Roll number 0309-002-6000. Proposed 2020 assessed value is $1,198,000. We have a joint recommendation today from the applicant and the assessor to reduce the value from that $1,198,000 down to $950,000 based on revised NOI account.
And Mr. Smith, you are accepting this?
We are in agreement, yes.
Ms. Davidson, any questions?
Just a quick one, I don't want to belabor it, but is your workup all based on the model?
Yep.
So this is based upon looking more closely at the actual numbers? I mean,
For the
they're pretty
agreement?
close even before the agreement.
Yeah, it's,
Anything in particular?
looking at some of the actuals, reviewed, and again, I mean, this one had a very low, capitalization rate. We revised that one.
Okay, because I noticed, I mean, the applicants with 929, now it's 950, yours was 1.2, 950, so it's all
Yeah.
sort of kind of close.
Yeah, it's all pretty close.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. That's everything, thanks.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to 836 St. Mary's Road. And whenever you're ready, Mr. Taylor.
Alright, so the file number for 836 St. Mary's Road is 19-590, roll number 08002-391-500. Proposed 2020 assessed value is $885,000. Page 2 just shows the income expense requests. The 2015 sale, which I believe Mr. Smith addresses in his evidence as being part of a portfolio sale. See some of the subject property leases listed there. Which we'll be getting into. I think the main issue of contention here today is the rent for the subject property. Moving forward, we have strip mall rental comparables on St. Mary's Road, Goulet, Marion, St. Anne's Road, market region for subject property, all ranging from between $10 and $20 a square foot. Page 6. You guys have the same page. Page 6 is just the model-driven value for the subject property. So all the rents, model driven, there's no overrides here. We talked earlier about vacancy for strip malls. The market vacancy is 4% applied by the city. I don't believe that's under contention here. 2% for non-recoverables. I think that's another bone of contention. And the cap rate applied here, again, is the 7.05, so at the 80th percentile on page 7. It's that $885,000. Again, we have numerous pages there of addenda. You guys have seen a million times. Page 18 has the aerial photographs of the subject property. So it's just on the west side of St. Mary's Road, across the street from the Tim Hortons and the Christ the King Church. And then I'll let Mr. Smith get into it in his presentation. But page 19 just has the through the 2015 income expense questionnaire here, where it just shows that they've reported net rents on the subject property. I believe I included this. I put the other one too. Sorry, just bear with me for a second. Yes. So I put that one in. And they also talk about that the portfolio sale, on the next 2 pages. Then they also put in the 2017 questionnaire, which listed the rents as being semi-gross. So, really, I think Mr. Smith is gonna talk about how the rents are semi-gross, but, yeah, I just found it confusing when we have one thing saying that they're net and the other one saying gross, so. Yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Smith, questions?
Yes, just, I was just going to ask with regard to the rents. So on page 2, it's listed as, and this is regarding the subject property leases, they're listed as, you're listing them as net there. And I want to, how to frame the question here, so the 2017 information does identify the properties, or rather the leases as being semi-gross, correct?
Actually, I'm not sure. It's like on my page 24, they have checked off, like the owner or whoever filled out the form, checked off net income type, which is just here. Right at the top left corner. And then they input the rents in, and they have the net per square foot listed here on page 25. And they also have the check mark for adjusted net rent. So I'm not sure if they're meaning by that, but they've checked off that it's adjusted net rent and that it's a net income type. And then that page 2 is literally just, the computer generates that automatically from the mailer right over to here when they check off the net rent box. So if they had checked off.
So somewhat confusing on your end.
Yeah, that's what I'm just saying. It's confusing. I've included the 2, one in that format, and then I guess the one by the previous owner. No, it's the same owner. But yeah, the other format where they could have checked gross off again and they checked net. So, and then even on the tenant roll here, they've listed some recoveries. They've checked that it's net lease. So for me, it's just kind of confusing.
Certainly. So moving on quickly to your, I guess, pages 3, 4, and 5, you've overwhelmed me with rent comparables here. I didn't have a chance to really run through all of these. Certainly some of these would be superior. Many of these would be superior to the subject, I'm imagining.
Yeah, there's some like further
strength,
south down St. Mary's Road, like have some of the Britannica rents that are closer to $20. I mean, I should try to stay with the older inventory properties too.
Yeah, understood. So, in looking through these, the bottom end of the range does appear to be in that $10 a square foot range. There is a number that are at that level.
Okay.
That's really my only questions, thank you.
Thank you. States?
I just trying to sort out these rents as well. So when I look at page 6 on the potential rents, those are all model driven?
Correct.
Okay, so then the arithmetic average of the rents is 1162.
Okay.
Sort of a question too. Like I just added them up and divided.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so then when I look at page 2, these are the actual net rents at point of time listed here, right?
Yeah, essentially it just takes them from the page 25 as they're listed there and just ports them over.
Some of the leased areas don't match, so like you've got on page 6, you've got a 2,000 leasable area. I only look at that because it's the biggest one at 1102, but there's no
So you're talking about
2,000 leasable area here.
it doesn't match from
Unless it's
page
the
2 to
1952
page,
one.
is that what you're
2
talking
to
about?
6, yeah.
Page 6 doesn't match, that one matches, that one matches. There's the one that's 2050.
Which is the biggest at 1102. Like, is it the 1952 area for 781?
Yeah, the 1230 and the 2050 don't match on like page 6. Yeah, all I know from previous cycles of having visited this property before, I know that in unit 844, so they're on page 25 of my brief, they're talking about Borders Anonymous there. For a period of time, they did occupy a portion of the neighboring unit, so they kind of blew out a wall, expanded their store into that space.
This is the store?
The Borders Anonymous, it's since been vacated, it's not there currently. So I think there's some discrepancy between the two, so you had some changeover. Essentially what you see on my page 6 more represents changes that have happened post-reference, but really hasn't changed the total leasable area.
So 1154-ish to 1154, 1163, and 11 are the majority of the property. So you're saying probably the rent is around that because.
Well, they're all wall driven, so they're not deviating too much. You're not looking at, a gross error in terms of us assessing them for spaces that exist. But I can use, like I did all the regional shopping centers. The problem is when we close the roll and finalize everything, between then and when we finally come down to sit down, you'll have lots of people moving in, moving out, so the space changes within the box.
Maybe then just looking at, like there's 3, 4, 5 feet, like 3, 4, and 5, or within the market area of St. Mary's Road and this type of property, which ones are the, in your view, the best, in size of leased area? Like is there a few you can point us to?
Like the best quality of.
No, the best comparable.
The best comparables.
Like for size, location, type.
Yeah, okay, so we'll get into that. So we're looking at my first comparable, first page, page 3. We have the Best West Pet Foods on St. Anne's Road, similar to subject property.
Which how far down is that?
It's the very top one.
Okay.
It's at 1170.
Yeah, sorry.
What else are we looking on here? With those ones and then the other ones there, they have the EMA proper and South Winnipeg in the 488 and 484 St. Anne's Road, so that's the strip mall on St. Anne's Road.
Sorry, which one is that?
The 3rd and 4th. So you're looking around $12 for that one. Again, there's ones in St. Boniface that are different. The St. Boniface area is different than on St. Mary's Road. So I'd say the St. Mary's Road and St. Anne's Road ones are similar. We have on page 4, there's the bottom kind of 5. As the applicant pointed out, we have the one that's at 1050, which is kind of like the low. So at 145 St. Anne's Road, which we're going to be talking about later away. But you have the other ones too on St. Mary's and St. Anne's. They're around the same. Strip malls again. Strip mall rents generally go from $10 to $20. The subject here we're looking at today is in the low range anyways. You can sometimes get down to $10.
Is this a low quality property?
Is it a low quality property? I'd say
The
it's,
rents are lower.
for me,
Like how's
talked
it
about this.
recorded in the records?
I've talked about this with our Madam Chairman before. So we have an effective year built on that of 1971, which is the actual year built. And I'd say it's average for using that age. I'm not saying it's 1991 built. We just looked at the one on Killarney where they redid the outside. And some people might say, okay, well that makes it into 1995 or whatever. So I'd say it's average for being 1971. Strip mall you typically see on St. Mary's, St. Anne's Road, and I'd say those comparables that I've highlighted are similar.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Taylor, there was a sale on the property in 2015.
Yep.
And you had mentioned that Mr. Smith might be talking about that in regards to a portfolio sale.
Yeah, I just mentioned it. He has it actually written down in his brief as being a portfolio sale. I do have it as having the same sales date as other properties we have listed on this docket today. But we do have the sales questionnaire on pages 21 and 22 for your information that the owner would have filled out.
So, I'm just, I haven't looked at Mr. Smith's brief yet, but, I'm just looking at your information, I guess, and So when these sales come up and, you know, they're be, you know, before the reference date, do you look at, in regards to the listing or anything like that, do you go back or you check with the land titles or anything like that?
I would say it really depends on the assessor involved
Yeah.
in verifying and vetting the sales. I'd say I might have a bit more scrutiny than most people in terms of looking at it. But a giant red flag is if you have, you know,
Yeah,
so
so,
multiple sales occur on the exact same day,
yeah.
and they all usually have nice round numbers. That's a red flag.
So I'm just wondering, you know, sometimes there's a list price, you know, a listing, and you know, they sometimes
Yeah.
sell around list price, or what's involved, it could be equipment, goodwill.
Yeah, well, that's why we send out these questionnaires, is to give the owner, purchaser and vendor, and usually we contact purchaser and vendor to see if there's any.
Yeah,
So,
you know,
really, that's the trouble too
so
with.
that's the next question, I
yeah.
guess, Mr. Taylor.
Yeah.
And that is that there's a sale of 800,000,
Yes.
and then there's the questionnaire that was completed.
Yeah.
And it says, you know, appraisal report at 850. So, you know, there's a discrepancy of $50,000. I mean, that's quite a bit of money.
Yeah, but it doesn't really say, they didn't send in,
Yeah.
the
But in-
report to
I'm-
us.
You know, shouldn't the questionnaire, I mean, if you ask the client to, or the owner to complete it,
Yeah.
shouldn't there be, you know, more, you know, information, or, you know,
Yeah.
more, I mean, if you're going back to the owner to ask him certain questions,
Yeah.
shouldn't it be, you know, more so?
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes on some properties, we'll
Now,
ask
I'm just
that
trying to,
question.
you know, get to the bottom line, and that is
Yeah.
like, you're looking for value.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is correct?
What is correct?
What is correct? I mean, you have a discrepancy here.
Well, you have a range. I
Well, you
guess,
have a range,
of market
but,
values, yeah.
but you're asking the owner, and the owner should have specified, you know, it's sold for 800,000.
Yeah, the owner
You know?
said, yeah, in 15 it sold for 800,000.
So-
But again, it's part of a portfolio sale. You never know
Well,
if you're
you
buying
know,
multiple
I
properties if
mean,
they're
you know,
getting.
I don't know that. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, you know, as an assessor,
Yeah.
you get these forms back.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe we should question it, or somebody should question it.
Oh, we definitely do that,
Yeah.
and definitely if we have this ticked off as there's an appraisal report filled out, we will call them up and say, can you provide us with a copy of the report, or
Yeah.
tell us more about the sale.
Okay.
But lots of times they'll say, like, I sent in the form, I'm a
Okay.
busy guy, I don't have time to answer more questions about
So
it.
you do your due diligence.
Yeah, especially, I can only comment on myself really, I would
Yeah.
follow up and call about this. I'd say generally that's the answer I get. I have also gotten that other, I guess, agents and assessors in the past have brought in full-on appraisal reports to a hearing to either get the value lowered or to get the value increased. I don't really think either is really appropriate, so.
Yeah. Well, you know, as board members, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, we try to get to, you know, what is fair? You know, it sort of leaves us in a awkward position, you
Yeah.
know? We have a sale, we have maybe an appraisal report, or a questionnaire that's completed, and I did look at Mr. Smith's presentation,
Yeah.
and he's coming in low. I mean, you know, so who is correct here?
Well, that's what I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
I feel like everyone's, my job is just to prove that we're within the range of
Okay,
market value.
Well, you know, I'd like it pinpointed, you know, like, if at all, or give us a range that is close.
Yeah,
Um,
but I mean, we're kind of bound doing it on mass valuation
I realize that, yeah.
to use this
Yeah.
standard, you know, like a 4% allowance for vacancy,
Yeah.
the same unrecovered road expenses, that cap rate being from the 20th to 8th percentile, like, all that stuff is really when you're dealing with mass appraisals. Whereas, you know, when you're talking about the guy who did the appraisal, you can say, okay, well, the owner said he wanted me to kick the value up a bit, so I'm gonna go a
Yeah.
little lower on the cap
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
But he's still in the wheelhouse of market value.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
I question
Yeah.
things like that.
So all I'm saying is,
Okay.
in my presentation, is that the rents look like they're in the
Yeah.
range, and all the other parameters fall within that same range.
Okay, I thank you. Thank you.
Just one quick question, and this is in regards to, so far, all the properties on the docket.
Yeah.
Page 2 of your brief, you've got checked off that you inspected the property.
That's correct.
So did you inspect the property, or did you go in as a citizen?
I went in, I didn't really talk to anybody. I mean, for retail, it's different. Lots of times you have people who are busy with customers. And during our reassessment cycle, it's a bit different than, say, if they had kind of previous property where they built a brand new building, where we're not under the same deadlines and pressures to get everything done. So inspecting it generally as a member of the public, I'm still there pulling up in a city vehicle with my clipboard that says City Winnipeg on it and my ID out.
Okay.
But no, I didn't go up to anybody saying like, I need to look in your back storage room or anything like that, because it's, I mean, I don't have a lot of time for that, and then lots of times tenants become upset with owners get upset with agents, so it's just easier for everyone involved for me just to go in and look, make sure that the building's still there and everything's still the way it's supposed to be.
So how would the, and I'm just asking for my own purposes, how would the inspection be different in terms if you were doing a more in-depth?
We're doing a more in-depth inspection, so you're getting access to, I won't use that one as an example. So, but you say you have a different retail store where they have a large storage space in the back. Lots of these places, subject property, there isn't a lot of storage rooms in the back, or, but you'll get access to that space, the mechanical room space. You'll have conversations about if there's been roof leakages or whatever, like, so I'm limited more to what I can see. I observe that there's, stained ceiling tiles or, cracking in the floor or whatever when I'm there. But generally the public spaces, in lots of these retail places, you're getting into 80–90% of the space without having to interrupt or upset anybody.
Okay.
So,
And so owners actually get upset?
yeah, I've had that come back prior. I mean, certain agents, Trevor and I don't really have any kind of issue. There's a mutual respect. We work together long enough that there isn't really that issue, but some other ones are more sensitive, or their operations are more sensitive, where they won't even tell, the tenant will tell the owner, I don't want the city coming in and poking around. I've had that happen, or stating, I can only accommodate something in like this 5-minute window on this day. And it's a bit difficult when you're in this exchange, you're in the process to go through that. And again, when we're dealing with like a brand new building, that's fine, because there's no immediate deadline to get everything on, but yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask 2 quick follow-up questions? Sorry, I
Absolutely.
forgot to ask them originally, and I'll be brief. It's only because I represent these 2 particular ones. In looking at the rent comparables, on your first page there, page 3, towards the bottom, 353 for Blanchet. You have the one particular unit in there at $14. That's the L-shaped strip mall with the Subway and on one end cap, and then the tattoo shop on the other.
Yeah, it's right across from the CCFM.
Right,
Yeah.
so, and I know you and I haven't done this, so you may not have gotten a chance to look at the background on it, but the rest of those 2 tenancies are on net leases. The remainder of that building is on a gross basis, and their net effectives come out under $10. I think I forgot to include them in my evidence, but
Yeah.
yeah, that particular one.
Yeah, I
And
can't
then
call
just,
it.
again, more for information's sake for you, for back in the office, the 1111 St. Mary's, the one just under that, 1113, it's all the same building. There is an element of semi-grossness in their leases on that property there.
With these
So I'm not
ones?
sure if those have been corrected or not.
I'm not sure, those would come
Netted out.
straight off the mailer.
So probably they'd be somewhat lower than that, that's all.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I
If
should-
they're
I-
checked off, generally I'm checking for net leases as
Yeah.
reported. My search was for market region and strip malls.
Yeah.
Leases starting in 2015 or later.
All of my questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you. If you'd like to give us your presentation?
Certainly. So I note that in my brief, for some reason,
Sorry, Mr. Merritt?
No, he's just going to address it. There's no workup.
the comparison didn't get copied and pasted somehow, so if everybody's
Yeah.
okay with it, I'll just pass that out, so for ease.
Mr. Smith, we were looking for it.
And both myself and Lori were sort of shuffling through the everything.
That's it.
Oh, you gave me one already.
Okay, I'll take it
I
back.
have to give you a little challenge there.
Yes,
Karen.
yeah.
Too much math?
So in respect to the sale of the property, so the subject property, 836 St. Mary's, and then our following property at 145 St. Anne's Road, they were part of a portfolio sale. They both sold from the same ownership company to the new owner as part of the package, bought at the same time on the same day as an overall purchase. So it's a multi-role sale and essentially should be treated as such, and the purchase price encompasses a picture of the overall purchase that they're buying, not each individual property. They simply made a estimation of the overall purchase price of the portfolio. So let's move back to 836 St. Mary's Road here. It is a property built in 1971. If you're familiar with where Christ the King Church is on St. Mary's Road, and I think Tim Hortons is now just north of that. If you go across the road, that's where this particular property is located. In the northern section of Norbury, I guess you would call it, between Dunkirk and St. Mary's Road. So our photos begin on page number 2. I also went to inspect the property, having communicated with the property manager, who's not part of our firm, and we were there outside of business hours due to other factors, so I wasn't able to walk through each of them. I have been to the property before and purchased pizza and been to Borders Anonymous, so not an inspection, but I have been there and seen the general overall condition. But if you look at my front page, we can just kind of walk through the tenancies. So we have Sophia's dress shop at the one end. I believe they're a relatively long-term tenant. Quality Pizza has been there for a very long time, as has Northland Appliance Repair Center. So these are all local retailers, lower end retail. Essentially, they're not going to produce huge amounts of sales out of these type of businesses, and this is the type of strip center that has drawn them, or that they're able to draw at this strip center. So obviously the rental rates that they pay are applicable to that. And then we have Swish and Matrix Mobile, formerly Borders Anonymous, was on that end. If you look at, I'm not sure if the city had other photos of interiors here or not, but we have a couple quick shots here that are not super clear, but you can see your general slat wall retail spaces, somewhat older and smaller. You've got your drop T-bar acoustic ceiling, so not a modern setup, certainly in terms of strip malls. It's representative of its age. The parking at the front is relatively compact. Obviously, you can only have one or two tenants coming into each unit and be able to accommodate them on site there. So that has an impact obviously on the size of the tenancies that you can get, the type of tenancies in terms of the number of people coming in and out. Parking is certainly an issue. The site is shown on page 5 and the location on page 6. As you can see, we're in that Norbury area south of Fermor where Glenlawn is. I think you probably got a general idea of where it is. So let's move on to the valuation. Page number 9. They are indeed gross leases. What I have done is deduct the appropriate expenses to bring them back to a net rate. And you can see that our rates for the property fall between $8.10, $9.45, $10.60, and then we have a low one at $4.41 a square foot. Now this is what they're actually achieving. Is it fair to base the valuation on those rents? Probably not. They're somewhat exceptionally low, but that's indicative of the type of building that it is. The type of property that it is, but let's look at the market and see what an appropriate rent would be. So we've done that at the bottom of page 9. These are all other retail strip centers, many of them certainly superior to the subject somewhat. We have the age of each of these centers in there. The term start dates, we tried to have them as close to the reference date as possible, obviously. And they do range throughout the city. We're looking at Regent Avenue, Roblin, Autumnwood, Phillips, Pembina. So there is a range of the city, obviously. Our rental rates that we have, and again, we're trying to kind of target similar type of properties, whether they be, call it disadvantaged by location or age or other factors, kind of giving you an indication of that narrow slice of the market. So it's not that there aren't higher rents than this, certainly there are, but we feel that these are indicative for the subject. If I can get you to look at page number 10 in particular, this is the following property, which was part of the portfolio sale. They had net rental rates for that property ranging between $10, $10.50, and $11.25 for the units that are located in that property in relatively close proximity to the subject. I didn't include them for whatever reason, but the 353 Cravache that I was referring to before, it again is the L-shaped strip mall just before the train tracks as you head east on Cravache on the north side of the road. There's 2 end caps that are net leases at $14, and then the interior L-shaped section of the mall is $10 and below generally. So we feel the overall in-place rent is probably too low to base a fair market value on, so I've increased the overall rate to $10 a square foot as being representative of the subject property. Again, it's at certainly the low end of the scale in terms of these types of strip malls, other than if you're in a more disadvantaged location in the north end, etc. Our remainder of our valuation you have on our sheet there. I'm not going to go through that in detail. Our other deductions remain the same. We've applied 4% vacancy for the market, 7% expense allowance, $7 shortfall, and our cap rate, we've simply used 7 instead of 7.05 based on our evidence from the market. We feel that's appropriate. It's a smaller center, so you would have somewhat more buyers for it perhaps, which may drive a cap rate such as this, but then it has the disadvantage factors of the age, the build out, the parking, etc. So we've applied 7%, and that gives us our market value of $718,000. As you can see on the handout there, and I think the addenda is the same as with the others. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Questions, Mr. Taylor?
Oh, good, thank you.
Stevenson?
I have no questions either, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
I just have a couple, Chairperson. I like the page 13 for cap rates, but there's no argument. I think that Gateway is hit the nail on the head. But the other ones are a little, they're a lot bigger, et cetera, and they sell for, their sales value is a lot higher too. So the economies of scale might come into play here in regards to cap rate.
It could, certainly could, yes.
The other thing is, you talked about the portfolio sale, and when you register a property in land titles, they want their pound of flesh in regards to, you know, what the value should be for the subject, and because they collect tax on it. Okay, so would you happen to know what the registration was for the? I mean, you talked about the portfolio sale. So when they go to register, did you check it all in regards to what value they put on it?
I think, and I did not pull the title on this, we had the same access to this information as provided to the city. And if you read through it, both, well, that's the other property. I believe this one is the same, where they're stating the consideration and sworn value are identical, as Mr. Taylor had noted. There's essentially a range of value that can be applicable to a property based on other factors. We look at acquisition of a portfolio. There's a certain benefit to a buyer in acquiring more property at one time, and that they're increasing the size of their portfolio. So there's a term for that, which my foggy mind is forgetting at the current time, but it's accretion. Thank you. It came back to me.
Okay.
There's a certain element of perhaps paying slightly more because they're acquiring multiple properties at one time.
So we haven't got to the other property, but is the value close to the same? You know, or is it similar?
It's a different size
Okay.
property as well. There's more tenancies. I mean, the actual value.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, you know, almost like determine value. Like you talked about a portfolio sale. Okay, so you're coming in with this one here at $718. So is the other one close to that? So does it reconcile to the total value what they put on the portfolio purchase?
No, and essentially that's what I'm saying is that in acquiring, and I believe if you go through the IAAO methodologies and rules, regulations, etc., it also states that one should not rely upon multi-role sales in arriving at. So in terms of the value, I think the sale value on the other one is $775, but again, our valuations, both the city and ours, are somewhat different than that.
So you talked about a portfolio sale. Now, are these two properties, or is there more properties?
I believe there may have been at least one more property. I don't have that information with me today.
Okay, I have no further questions, Madam.
Thank you. I just have one quick question, more out of curiosity. On page 9 of your brief, when you're showing your rents, although you had stated these aren't actually net rents, but I do notice that the largest square foot you've got stated 441.
Correct. That's the net effective once you deduct the
Right.
cost. So we place no reliance on that as far as the ultimate market value. It's
Okay.
too low.
Okay, just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
I don't want to go on and on. Sometimes you're a tenant that has been in place for ages and you just want
Which
them
is
to
what?
continue.
Okay. We're actually just gonna take a quick 5-minute break here. Thank you. And I'd like to resume this hearing, and we are going to go on to our next property at 145 St. Anne's Road. Mr. Taylor, whenever you're ready.
Sure. File number for 145 Sands Road is 19-572. Roll number 08001346000. The proposed 2020 assessed value was $1,152,000. We have a joint recommendation from the applicant and the assessor to reduce the value from the $1,152,000 down to $803,000 based on a revised NOI cap rate.
Sorry, 803?
803, yeah.
Thank you. You are accepting this, Mr.
We are
Smith?
in agreement with that market value, yes.
Thank you. Questions, Ms. Davis?
I have no questions.
Mr. Merritt?
I have nothing. Thank you.
I have none. Thank you. We're going to move on to 510 Sergeant.
So the file number for 510 Sergeant is 19-1566. Roll number is 1305136500. The proposed 2020 assessed value is $960,000. We have a joint recommendation from the applicant and assessor to reduce the value from $960,000 down to $780,000, so $780,000 based on revised NOI cap rate again.
And you are in agreement with this, Mr. Smith?
We are, yes.
Thank you. Questions, Ms. Davidson?
I have no questions, thanks.
Questions, Mr. Merritt?
No, thank you.
Oh, all right. I don't have my little thing anymore. I believe this hearing is concluded.
What about the last one?
She said it was withdrawn.
Oh.
Yes, 2015
Okay.
is withdrawn.
Withdrawn?